If you're in the mental health industry and want to grow your impact, your reach, and your organization, you need to be at the Mental Health Marketing Conference. This October 7th through 9th, join hundreds of marketers, executives, and clinicians for 3 powerful days of inspiration, strategy, and networking. From AI to storytelling, from branding to market strategy, you'll leave with actionable ideas, meaningful connections, and access to industry experts. It's so much more than a conference, it's a community. Visit mhmarketing.org to learn more and grab your ticket today. Attend in person in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, or attend online and see me as one of the keynotes. And use discount Joe to get an extra 10% off any ticket. Again, that's mhmarketing.org and use promo code Joe to get an extra 10% off any ticket. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1245. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. And, we cover so many different things here on the show, and I am so excited. I'm just going to jump right in today because we have Kevin Evers, who is senior editor at Harvard Business Review and also the author of There's Nothing Like This, The Strategic Genius of Taylor Swift. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Joe.
Yeah. I love having authors. I love having HBR people. I even pulled out my copy of Boundaries, Priorities, and Finding Work-Life Balance, where I've got a
There
chapter
we
in
go.
there.
Okay.
So
Okay.
HBR has been awesome to me.
Yeah.
I've had a few articles with you guys on the 4-day work week and boundaries. And so it's great to be chatting with you.
Yeah. I'm glad to connect.
Yeah, well, you've got this book out, and for me, when I wrote Thursday is the New Friday, I feel like there were just things that were germinating for years that I had to kind of puke up, organize, and figure out like what's the main hook for the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
What of this was germinating for a long time for you?
So right now, we're about 3 years from when I first came up with the idea for this book. So back in early 2022. And the interesting story is I'm an editor at HBR. I edit books, and I was going to have someone else write the book. But I had such a clear idea for what the book had to be that it felt like malpractice not to do it myself. And I've
Mm,
never had this experience before where the ideas came very quickly. And the more and more I researched Taylor Swift and the more and more I designed a proposal and tried to figure out what the book could be, the more and more excited I was. And
yeah.
usually, I'm an editor, so I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to ideas. And I know that it's rare that after a month, after 2 months, after 3 months, after a year, after 2 years, to be still enthused with an idea.
Well, and are you a Swiftie? Are you like super into Taylor Swift?
I was a casual fan,
Okay.
and my daughter is a huge Swiftie. She's 8 years old now. She knows all the lyrics, loves Taylor. We went to the Eras tour. But yeah, I approached this book. I wanted to write a book from a neutral and authoritative point of view.
Yeah.
Am I a fan now? Of course. You can't write a book about Taylor Swift and not walk away thoroughly impressed with what she's been able to do.
Yeah. I remember there's a Rolling Stone article, you probably cited it in your book or at least looked at it. This would have been like 2 or 3 years ago that looked at the market share of Taylor Swift and
Yep,
how
yep,
basically she's single-handedly kept the music industry alive.
yeah, yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about how there is nothing like this and some of the strategic genius. And I mean, of course, go get the book because that's where you're going to get all of these stories. But like, what were some of the things that you discovered that just you maybe went into it thinking, okay, there's some strategy here. There's nothing like this. You kind of have your idea. And as you dug deeper, you were just like, what?
I knew nothing about her early career.
Yeah.
When she broke out in country music in 2006, I was a 23-year-old graduate student listening to Radiohead and
Yeah.
watching European art films. Taylor Swift was not on my radar. And when I researched her early career, what really surprised me is she had such a clear vision for what she wanted to do at 13, 14 years old,
Wow.
which seemed really rare to me because I don't know about you, but when I was 13 and 14, I didn't have a clear sense of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I still don't have a clear sense of what I want to do, and I'm 40. And her clear vision was she wanted to write her own songs. Now, in Nashville, this is pretty rare, especially for someone her age. It's usually done by professional songwriters. And she wanted to write those songs for an audience of her peers, teenage girls. Now, the consensus in country music was there's no market for teenage girls. And they had the data and they had the past failures to show that that might be true. But Taylor stuck to her guns. She really did. And she made some bold decisions based on that vision. She had a development deal with RCA Records, one of the biggest labels on Nashville's Music Row. And she ended up leaving them
Mm.
because they didn't believe in her vision. And yeah, that's what really surprised me the most. She really had a clear idea of the artist she wanted to be and the audience she wanted to hit.
Yeah. I'm interested because, being a senior editor, it's like when I was working on Thursday as the new Friday, there's all these things that, book publishers are trying to figure out with the market. And the
Yep.
title was one of them. And Thursday is the new Friday was the title that I felt like I liked it. I liked Orange is the New Black. It sort of felt like a little like
It's very catchy.
trend.
Yeah.
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 And I tend to be just more like I'm with you with like art films, Radiohead. Like I have that bend. And so sometimes in the business market, I don't always fit in.
Yeah.
And I remember HarperCollins was pushing like a book that was like less is more, or like work harder not smarter, like these things that you've heard a million times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, can we at least do like ask whatever like focus groups you have to at least get some data here before we kill my
Hmm.
idea. And then it came back that they were almost equal in regards to this. So I was like, thank God that like whoever answered these questions like
For
liked
sure.
Thursday as a new Friday. So you're on the side of having to kill ideas and kind of be the RCA Records that says there's no market for this. And
Yeah.
yet you're also saying she did something really baller to
Hmm.
like say, you know what, like I believe in this and she was successful. Like, how do you personally rectify those two worlds of the knowledge of Taylor Swift and the knowledge of being a senior editor?
It's really hard because what Taylor did is she ended up finding someone who really did believe in her vision. His name was Scott Borchetta, and he was working for Universal Label Group at the time. And he said, I want to sign you to a contract. She was 14 at the time. And I'm never going to tell you to write someone else's song or to perform someone else's songs. But there's a caveat. He said, I'm leaving Universal Label Group and I'm starting my own label. And that label didn't have funding. It didn't have a headquarters. It didn't even have a name at the time. But she went with Scott because he believed in her vision. And that turned out to be one of the best decisions that she's ever made because Scott Borchetta had a lot of skin in the game. He really needed Taylor Swift to succeed because his startup label wouldn't succeed if Taylor Swift didn't succeed.
Right.
And that was really important because if she went to a major label, would someone really push her that hard? Because that executive would face a lot of resistance internally and would face that resistance externally as well. But Scott, since he had so much skin in the game, he was really willing to hustle on her behalf. So when it comes to my own career, I you have to pick your battles, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of books that I see that I think will do well, but they don't quite fit into what we do at HBR. And so I pass. But there's other times when I really believe in the writing, I really believe in the idea, and I really believe in the author. And those are the situations where I will act like I have a lot of skin in the game, that I'm
Mm.
running my own startup and I'm an entrepreneur and I really want to invest in this project. And those are the projects I'm really willing to fight hard for.
Yeah. Now, I know you have a MFA in film from Boston U. How does that kind of artsy side, like when I think of HBR, like I love the stuff that gets put out. I do feel like it really kind of does some cutting edge stuff. It's not just your typical, I won't name other names, but it's not your typical just like here's business stuff. And so it
Yeah.
does make sense on one level to have like an MFA in film person also be in this business because I think you guys often do try to mix that kind of unique angle.
Yeah.
How have you found it coming from, like you said, like a Radiohead, like foreign film kind of guy in what has traditionally been, I mean, Harvard's freaking like Harvard, like
Harvard's Harvard. Yeah.
how do you
Yeah. Yeah.
bring those two worlds together and like what's the advantage of that for you? What's the disadvantage?
When I first started, the business content was really intimidating to me because it seemed so foreign.
Yeah.
But the longer I've been at HBR, I've realized that a lot of our content does overlap with a lot of my interests. business intersects with so many different topics, whether it's creativity, innovation, and then of course you have leadership and strategy and other topics as well. But that's the thing that always surprised me about HBR is there is a ton of content that I find super interesting, even though I'm not coming from a uber business background.
Yeah.
And my background in the arts does help me. I think the biggest thing is it helps me bring more humanity to my editing, not just in my interactions with people, but in the content itself.
Mm,
If you're editing something that has a business case study or an example, sometimes that can feel dry. Sometimes that can feel like, okay, this person did X, Y, and Z, but I can bring more storytelling into that. I
yeah.
can bring more emotion and empathy into the content. And that's what I really love to do because business is a human enterprise, right? And it's easy sometimes to look at business from an arm's length away and say, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And that content can be really interesting. But I'm really interested in the human side of things.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why you're so successful with it. Because I mean, I do think that, that's like I do improv. I talk about it on almost every show because there's always something. But I've
Yeah.
been doing improv for 5 or 6 years, done intensives down in Chicago, and it just lights me up. And it's not for any career move at all. It's I just
Hmm.
freaking love it. And just thinking about how often within it having that looseness and having that like we have to be agile within this scene
Yeah.
is so helpful in my business world, in my speaking
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Even last night, I was out to dinner with a friend and we were in this booth and this guy's jacket at this really nice restaurant just like falls on me and he like doesn't move it. And like, I think, and he's an older gentleman. And like, I imagine after like a couple minutes, like someone said something to him and he like grabs the jacket. And when they got up to leave, he says to me, hey, sorry for the jacket thing. And I just like flippantly say, well, that's fine. I grabbed your wallet, so our dinner's going to be covered. And the guy like starts like touching himself.
It's
It's like to
funny.
just
Yeah.
have this lightness in life. It's really
Yeah.
helpful with that.
Yeah.
How are you applying either personally what you learned from the genius of Taylor Swift, or how are you seeing other business leaders like take these concepts and apply them to their counseling practice, to their small business, to the way that they think about, or maybe what's the potential? Because I know at the time this recording, the book comes out in like a week. Um, how do you see that application to what we can all learn from what she's done?
The biggest thing about Taylor is she's been doing this for 2 decades and she's never stopped creating music. I
Hmm.
mean, for the last 2 decades, she's released 11 studio albums, new studio albums, 4 re recordings. And first off, that I find really interesting about her is she built a career based on trust and consistency. And she's also realized that her talent is really important. Really, she spends a lot of time working on her craft, but she also realizes, or at least her actions show, that she's as equally obsessed about her fans or her customers.
Mm.
And that is so critical. And that is so critical to her success. She's fan obsessed and she goes above and beyond for her fans. It reminds me of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos uses the term customer obsessed, and I'm using the term fan obsessed for Taylor. You think of the Eras tour. She could have played 2.5 hours, 2 hours of a greatest hits show, and her fans would have loved it. But instead, she plays 3.5 hours. She plays a set list that spans 40 songs. She devotes a mini set to every album of her career except for her debut. That's that's exceeding already high expectations that her fans have. And this is what she's done her entire career. And I think that's a big reason why she's found so much success, why she's so popular, and why her fans stick around for so
Mm.
long. So if I
Tell
could
me
bring
more
it
about
back
things
to,
you
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, tell me more about things you discovered around fans because I think sometimes, especially as therapists, it's like, we get counseling,
Yeah.
clients, they come in, they leave. And I think that's not even a lens of like having people that love your counseling practice. So
Mhm.
like what does Taylor do that really like digs into that goes above and beyond, she longer sets, like what else did she do?
Well, I don't know if therapists could follow this, but she has sent her fans Christmas presents.
Hmm.
And one of the the most famous thing that she's done is she invited fans into her home for listening parties. She busts fans in to all her different homes across the United States. I think she did one in London as well, which again is really extreme because artists try to have boundaries between themselves and the fans. And that's something that Taylor has built up over time, but she also does things that I don't think anyone else would do. I can't think of another artist that has invited her fans into their homes. And I really think she looks at those relationships as critical to her success. And you hear her all the time when she receives an award. She says, I owe this all to the fans. And of course, people say that, but I really think she means it. I really do. And I think her connection with her fans is extremely genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And that really drives those relationships. It's really hard to fake that
Yeah.
type of stuff, right? And she has always attacked the fan connection from a really heartfelt and genuine way.
Yeah. Yeah. As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using Therapy Notes. They make billing, scheduling, note taking, telehealth, and e prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the #1 highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. Well, I think that idea of being customer obsessed is sometimes hard for therapists because we're taught so much around boundaries, around
Yeah.
like dual relationships and things like that. And I think there's ways that I've seen lots of therapists do it where they'll host like an annual, January New Year's party. So they're not getting in the muck of like who's celebrating what in December. And
Yeah.
they'll invite colleagues, they'll invite community members, they'll invite, clients. And it's no one has a sticker that says I'm a client, I'm a community member. It's just like kind of like an open invitation type
Yeah.
of thing
Yeah.
that's impacting the community in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, there's ways that I think people can stand out in those ways to be, more customer obsessed.
Taylor has always understood that her fans are hiring her to do something more than listen to music, right?
Mm,
That for the fans, it's really about connection and building a close personal relationship with her. Whether that's actually happening or not, there is the illusion that that is happening.
yeah.
And everything that she does revolves around that.
Yeah, I wonder, it's interesting. I was helping DJ a elementary like recess party, and it was like they decided, in the springtime to have like music playing, the kids could make requests, and all these little girls and some boys were just Taylor, 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 and knowing every lyric, every
Mhm.
word. I have a 10-year-old and 13-year-old girls, and my 13-year-old now is like too cool for Taylor. But it's
Yeah, yeah.
like, but then she always comes back to those songs too.
Hmm.
How do you think, and maybe you didn't get into the psychology of Taylor, like so many of the songs revolve around still kind of that initial reason she started writing songs, love, rejection, kind of the teen angst type of feeling, but she's been doing it for 20 years. Like, what do you think the value is in kind of sticking with that sort? And maybe I don't know the nuance of her lyrics enough. Maybe I'm generalizing too much, and you can correct me on that.
Yeah.
Um, is there value in being so consistent and kind of having that teen angst feeling? And also psychologically, sometimes it feels like is she just like stuck in that like spot too? So I don't know. Any thoughts on that observation?
Well, when she started off, the reason why she was able to break out in country music and the reason why her fans reacted so passionately is because she was going after an underserved audience, and that was teen girls in country music. And she was really validating their emotions and experiences. And I think that's a strong reason why they had such a a big reaction to what she was doing. Now, it's really hard for teen stars to evolve from their teen years, right? There aren't many teen stars that make their way in their 20s, no less their 30s. And I
And
think
especially
Taylor,
female stars that
female
don't just
stars,
go the like, I have to now be super slutty to just make it in the
right?
world. Like to
I mean, the
to
idea,
still,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and the idea is that the audience tends to mature faster than the star can, and they move on to other artists. But Taylor has managed to evolve and grow along with her fan base, and I think that's why their relationships are so special.
mm,
I don't quite agree that she's stuck back in her teen years. I think her music does mature with her age, and that's that's unique because she writes her own songs,
yeah,
and that connection continues whether she's 25, 27, 30, or 35. And that's another reason why her fans stick around for so long. And that's why the Eras tour was so successful, especially with fans, because it was a retrospective, yes, but it was a way for those fans to relive those emotions and experiences of her past music.
yeah.
And that's why it resonated so strongly.
Well, I think that also then it's like a lot of things that are kind of coming back around from the 90s. It's like, my sister who is a huge Swiftie,
Yeah.
took her daughters and like they went to the Eras, but then she and her husband, and he's a Swiftie too, like they went and did it as like a date night in Minnesota and Arizona or wherever they went on the Eras tour. And so I think there is also that like like my daughters have got really into Rage Against the Machine lately, which I'm just like, thank God. Like, and there's something as a parent to just be like excited that your kids are, getting into that. And, my older daughter has a Nirvana t-shirt and there is something around that, like passing it on to the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
get, kind of into some of the more of the business principles that she's done. So it sounds like really the fan base is part of it, the consistency, the growth within the consistency. What else has she done from a business perspective that we can really kind of take back to small businesses?
She takes bold risks at times when it otherwise wouldn't seem like she should take those risks.
Hmm.
She tends to make bold choices when she's uber successful and popular. This happened back in 2014. For years, she had been in country music and pop at the same time, and this was a great strategy for her. She had cornered both markets, and she had three straight number one albums. But in 2014, she decided to go full on pop, and she left country music completely behind. She
Mm.
left an entire market essentially, and she received a lot of pushback from her label. They said, "Can you give us three country songs? This is a great album, but we want three country songs." And she said, "Absolutely not. I'm sticking with pure pop music." And that turned out to be a pretty good decision for her because she ended up expanding her fan base and her global appeal at the same time. And that
Mm.
album is one of the most successful albums of the 2010s, right? And she's done this throughout her career as well, just taking bold risks when I think a lot of us, especially me, if I had three straight number one albums, I'm probably sticking to the same formula,
Right.
right? And I call it productive paranoia.
Mhm.
She's always had this sense of, I don't know, like I probably should be growing, I probably should be adapting, even though I'm uber successful and uber popular. I should be doing something new. I constantly need to be changing. I constantly have to be adapting. And that's another big reason why she's had so much longevity.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's other bands that are like that too. Like you had mentioned Radiohead. I think about
Yeah.
how every album feels like it has its own tone and mood and sound. Where it's like I remember, buying In Rainbows when I think that's when they did the Pay What You Want. And they were like the first people that did that in the middle
Yeah.
of like everyone doing Napster and stuff. But it was like they actually made money off an album when other people weren't. And that sound sounded so different than some of the other albums. And I think that those artists that can kind of reinvent themselves while still saying like what are the common threads throughout, like
Right.
those are the ones that I think level up in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what Taylor has done too. She's gone from pop and now she's done more indie rock. And she's every album is its own universe, has its own
Mm.
sound. And that is very similar to what Radiohead does. Does she make are her sonic pivots as big and crazy as Radiohead's? Probably not.
Hmm.
But both of those artists are able to make changes and their fans expect those changes and really want those changes. But at the same time, they don't change so much that they alienate the people who love them the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so awesome. So, what are a couple things that we can just kind of leave small business owners with that you would say are just some of the like kind of quick hit things that you learned from Taylor through this project?
Taylor turns challenges and controversies into moments of empowerment for her and her fans. I
Mm,
call her anti fragile, which is a step up from resistance. Anti fragile means not only do I get through a problem, but I grow stronger as a result. When I come at the end of it, I'm actually stronger than I was when I began. And she's done this her entire career. And a big reason for this is she turns those controversies and challenges into great art.
yeah.
And she doesn't complain so much. She doesn't write screeds on the internet. She turns those challenges into amazing music.
Yeah.
And yeah, she perseveres. She's anti-fragile. And think about it, she's 2 decades into her career, and she's even bigger now than she was when she started.
Right. Man, I think that just thinking about the average counseling practice, in some ways, I'm thinking we just play too small.
Yep.
We don't think about like what are the things that we could be doing that really, take us beyond our own community. That push the envelope. That I even think about when I first started out, I did this thing called dinner and a counseling session, and I had this deal with this like nice restaurant back when you could get dinner for $50. And so I would get a $50 gift card. People would pay $100 for this dinner and a counseling session. They'd come to counseling and get this like $50 gift card. And they'd go get a nice-ish dinner, or at least $50 towards it. And it got a lot of, just local media, like instead of dinner and a movie, like do dinner and a counseling session. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
finding those things that help you stand out in just a way that is so different from kind of your competition.
Yeah. And she hustles too. She's
Yeah.
the hardest worker there is out there. And she's almost incentivized not to hustle as much as she used to because she is so popular and
Yeah.
successful, which is something I can relate to. I'm putting a book out into the world, right? And that's a really hard thing to do. And there's a promotional hustle and there's so
Oh my
much to
gosh.
do. And it's sometimes it's really hard to go like take it up a notch or two, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine being, if I was the most successful book author there was, I don't know if I'd work as hard as Taylor Swift.
Right. Yeah, like I think about the 2 months before my book launch, I did 200 podcast interviews in 60 days, and it's like my throat felt like it was bleeding every week, like just like so many things. But then I also figured out what are the stories that resonate with people, and it was
Yeah.
like got
Yeah.
really dialed in too in a way
Mhm.
that I couldn't have. Well, Kevin, such a great conversation. The last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Based on my research on Taylor Swift, and this is advice that she's given to especially younger artists, where she says, just keep going. It's
Mm.
really, really hard to navigate any kind of career. And Taylor herself, as I mentioned, has gone through many ups and downs in her career, but she's never stopped.
Mm.
She always goes back to the music. She's always creating music. And this is advice that I'm taking away from my own research and writing the book is what would Taylor do? And just keep going. No matter the controversy, no matter the hardship, just keep doing what you're doing.
Mm. So awesome. Well, the book is There's Nothing Like This, The Strategic Genius of Taylor Swift, from Kevin Evers, who is senior editor at Harvard Business Review. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
It's things like this that, thinking about what do we want to put in the world, that Kevin had 3 years of thinking through this, thinking it might be somebody else's project. Maybe inside you, there's a project that's brewing. Maybe there's just things you say in your counseling sessions over and over. Maybe you're a trauma therapist and you just keep going back to the same 5 or 7 things. Keep documenting that. Put that in a Trello, board. Write it down on a note. You never know how those things are going to come together. When I was writing Thursday is the New Friday, I had a Trello board that any story that I thought of or found that I thought loosely related to the 4-day work week, I would just drop it in there. Any research I found, I would drop it in there. And then when it was time to write the chapters, I could say, okay, I'm writing a chapter on curiosity. What stories do I have from my own life or clients' lives or other things that I can put in here? What research do I have here? Like, I remember when I found the declassified CIA files all about like mind melding and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I gotta find a way to put that in the book. It was just interesting to me. And so, when you come to that moment of writing a book or putting together a webinar, you never know what you're going to have to pull from. So I'd say just start gathering these interesting things and let those ideas start to germinate. We also couldn't do this show without amazing sponsors like Therapy Notes. Therapy Notes is the best electronic health records out there. They will help you switch over from your current EHR. They also give you 2 months for free or just money off if you use promo code Joe at checkout. They are phenomenal. They help with automated billing. It's going to make it easier to outsource your billing. So many reasons to switch to Therapy Notes. Just head on over to therapynotes.com, read about it, and at checkout, just use promo code Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.